I've been editing and publishing Women's Agenda for 4 years now, with a couple of short maternity leave stints thrown in. We launched back in 2012 as an online news publication for career-minded women, so published by Private Media, which also publishes Crikey, Smart Company, Startup Smart, and a bunch of other digital websites. So at first, this idea that we were launching for professional women, I really took that to mean that, we were there to report on news and the views affecting women who are determined to climb the leadership ladder in large corporates. That's how I saw it at first. So women in law firms, in accounting firms, in banking, in finance, in media, etc. But what I quickly noticed and had the pleasure of learning about was this growing group of female entrepreneurs. So today, around 20% of our audience on Women's Agenda call themselves entrepreneurs or small business owners, and another 40% have aspirations to one day start their own business. So it really shows where I think a lot of women's heads are at the moment. And a lot of those women won't ever start a business. There'll be plenty of reasons why they don't. But the fact that they are thinking of it, and a lot of them do have great ideas, I think just goes to show that we really need to see more female entrepreneurial voices out there and more great success stories to show what can be done. And more supporting organisations, I might add, like what Australia Post is doing. So we don't have the readership data to explain why so many women want to start their own businesses, but I've interviewed hundreds of women myself, so I do think I can say anecdotally a few reasons why this is the case. So I'll put it down to three. The first is that women want control over their work and over their ambitions. The second, that women want flexibility over how and when they work. And the third, that women want the possibility of something bigger and to have the say over making that happen, which isn't always possible in a larger corporate. And so I also put myself as one of these women now. And so 3 months ago, the opportunity to acquire Women's Agenda did come up. And like I've mentioned, it probably wasn't the best timing for me personally. I have a 2-year-old, and at that point I had a 3-week-old baby at home. But I knew that certain opportunities simply don't wait for the right time for you, or for you to be in the right frame of mind. So I had to kind of get it done. And I know that many people in the room have dealt with this, is the fact that things don't happen at the right time. Children don't happen at the right time. They don't necessarily happen when exactly you plan for them to happen, as much as you'd like them to. And so you can't always work around that they do have to be your number one priority as well. And then there's the question of maternity leave. If you're a small business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, can you actually take maternity leave? And there's that awkward question that other mothers ask you, when are you returning to work? And it's like, oh, well, I've been trying to do it while my baby's been napping for the last couple of hours today. So, like I say, I'm sure many of you have dealt with that, and it also comes with its own kind of anecdotes around this complex equation of how you make that work. And just last night I was sitting down with my husband, who also owns his own business, and he has kindly offered for me to take half his office. So I was sketching that out, and I had a cot on one side and I had a little play area. And I thought how amusing this is, because he runs a transport company and it's all male, and it's all truck drivers and forklifts and lots of swearing and arguing, and I'm going to bring Women's Agenda in there. So it'll be a great opportunity for me to try and change a few things there, I think, too. So aside from all that, I've been thinking a lot about ambition and where a lot of us get the ambition to own our own businesses as well. And when I think about my own story on this, when I left high school to study journalism and pursue the career in media, which is what I always wanted, it never occurred to me that I wouldn't be working for someone else. And I don't know that it occurred for a lot of the girls that I went to school with that would be the case. That, if you were other careers in law, careers in banking, not so much careers in technology, but very much careers in corporates were encouraged, where if you're particularly ambitious, you'd try and work your way up the leadership ladder. And I was thinking about this on the plane over, and I thought that the sad reality is that when I was a younger child, I did have this entrepreneurial tendency, and that is that I wasn't quite setting up lemonade stores, but I did sell flowers on the street. I did paint cards and sell them to my neighbours. I actually started my own magazine as an 11-year-old, and my father got a photocopier in his home office, and I thought I could be Rupert Murdoch. It was just so it was we often do have these ideas that to create something and to sell something and to own the means to that ourselves. But for some reason, I don't necessarily think that message is transferring through to when we pursue an education and when we pursue a career. And what I find with people, particularly in my age group in the early 30s, and I've seen this a lot with people that I went to school, is that now is the time that women are looking at the potential to do their own thing. And I'm not sure if that is because it also coincides with a time for changed life experiences, when your circumstances might change, or when you're looking for greater autonomy or something else. So the state of, I wanted to share a little bit about the ecosystem of female entrepreneurship. And we are the 12.5%. So we are the 12.5% of the 5.3 million working women who are running their own businesses at the moment. We all have our own story behind how we got here and why. My story is pretty new. Some of you might have stories that go a lot longer than that. And that story could be that you came up with just a really, really great idea. It could be that you're a natural entrepreneur, that you've worked relentlessly hard at business after business. It could be that you started the business out of necessity, that there was no choice but to be successful, to support your kids, to pay the rent, to build a retirement. It could be that you needed flexibility and autonomy, that the confines of a corporate world did not match how you wanted and how you needed to actually work. So no matter what it is, it's a story that is unique to each and every one of us. And it's a collection of these stories that really drives this ecosystem of female entrepreneurship here. So a few things that I've learnt about the 12.5%. And these are according to a bunch of different research studies and the ABS, particularly in a report prepared for the Office of Women in 2015. So currently 34% of Australian business operators are female. And that's a figure that's grown significantly. So this is very much an indication of the changing times. So that's grown by 46% over the last 2 decades, almost twice the rate of men. But it still shows that women are underrepresented as entrepreneurs. So 44% of us are aged 40 to 54. 30% of us were born overseas. 82% of us have a diploma or a degree. 52% of us participate in voluntary work. 47% of us have dependent children living at home. And we're the most likely segment of working people to have such caring responsibilities. A massive 81% of mothers of children of any age, a massive 81% of those small business owners are mothers of children of any age. And in 2011, we saw the word mumpreneur, which is a word that I absolutely despise, enter the English dictionary. So I think it was a few years before the word dadpreneur made it in there as well, but it has. So that's a good sign as well. So we are living in the second best country in the world to be a female entrepreneur behind the United States. And here's the very good news, and that is that 57% of us are pleased or delighted with the quality of our lives. So it seems business is a good place to be, but as many of us know, it's not without its challenges. So some of those challenges in terms of earnings, there is a significant pay gap between men and women. So the average earnings for a female unincorporated business owner was $423 a week, according to 2011-2012 data, compared with $890 for men. So much higher than the national gender pay gap. And superannuation, well, according to 2007 stats, and I agree we do need something more recent than this, but I will refer to this. So female business owners were less likely than female employees to have superannuation, so 76% compared to 93%. And just 45% of us were making super contributions. 15% of us work 7 days a week. Another 15% work 6 days. Few of us work a very standard 5-day week. And so no wonder 38% of us report never having any spare time that we don't know what to do with. So a lack of finance is the key reason women give for not going ahead with a business they had been considering. And less than 5% of investors are currently female. So another point I wanted to note is that women hold the top 2 spots on the Forbes Australia Rich list, but just 7 of the top 50. And most of those got there through inheritance. So we need more female billionaires. Wouldn't that be nice to be one as well? But isn't it a nice aspiration to have? So we need major female success stories. We have seen a lot of them, and women are particularly generous with their time in sharing their stories of success and how they got there and their tips. But we do need to see more, and I'd love to see something like of the likes of the tech startup Atlassian, a female, women of that kind of, who have a massive business like that, who can really start to showcase something different. So back to the ecosystem. The really great thing about female entrepreneurship, like we said, is that I think most of us understand and recognise these problems, and we all want to do more to support each other in overcoming them and changing the state of that situation in Australia. And social media has created a wonderful avenue for us to connect and to learn from others. Digital sites like Women's Agenda and other things like Smart Company, Startup Smart, that I've had the pleasure of working with over the years, that there is a lot of free information out there to help, because a lot of women are willing to be interviewed to, like I say, to share their success stories, for sharing their tips. And there are so many networking opportunities as well, particularly free networking opportunities. And there are many organisations here, like Australia Post, that realise the significant power of this segment of working women and want to be involved and want to step in to help. So we are the 12.5%, and I think we are a particularly powerful segment of the workforce for this country. So thank you very much for having me. I think Holly is going to come up and ask me a few questions. So thank you very much.
Angela, you mentioned that only 5% of investors are female. Do you think that introduces any unintentional bias, or is there something there that we need to look at more closely in terms of the propensity to go and ask for that finance, or perhaps the propensity to actually get some?
So I think it probably works, both ways, in that perhaps there are not enough female investors because there's not been the level of economic success, I guess, for those female investors to have something to return. Are you from Scale? Ozpost, sorry. Okay. So, because I got that figure from Scale, and I think we've got someone from... Yes, okay. That is right, isn't it? 5%. And is it still 5%? Yeah, so, and I have got this down to ask you in our next panel session as well. So,
to be continued.
She might be able to offer a better explanation than me, but I think that there's also something going on at pitching events that is probably not conducive for female entrepreneurs, or maybe female investors as well. I don't know, but I hope to get a better answer to that question from you shortly. And I remember hearing stories from Rebecca Campbell from Posse, and she'd mentioned that she has been to pitching events where she was the only woman in the room. And she's been to events where they were held above a brothel and things like that. Just common sense things that you think would not happen anymore, but still do. 1% of our audience are male, which I guess happens when you call yourself Women's Agenda. And I might even suggest that a good portion of those might be trolls.
I was going to ask you, actually.
Yeah, because we do get quite a bit of that, and I have been accused of... I actually have suggested to some men on social media that they're welcome to start Men's Agenda, that I think the URL is still available and they can go ahead and do that if they think that what we are writing about is so unfair. But we do actually... we've got quite a few male contributors, and so I think that, first of all, helps, and I'd like to see more of that in the future as well. And I also find that... we're making a lot better use of LinkedIn, and that's where I find that we do get a better male audience too. And often just taking it off the Women's Agenda platform, publishing it through my own LinkedIn account or through some other way can help in terms of getting the message out there, and in terms of showing the work that we do back on Women's Agenda, but the fact that this really is about workplace equality. And I firmly believe that there's a lot that men will benefit from with some of the messages that we share, particularly around workplace flexibility, particularly around sharing more responsibilities at home, particularly around having the opportunity to spend more time with family, with friends, with hobbies, with whatever you have going on outside of your life. I remember the first thing a friend of mine said to me who runs her own business, and she just made the point, welcome to working every day for the rest of your life. And I was like, wow, that's interesting, because I know, because I've got this baby and I kind of had plans to watch a lot of Netflix while I was breastfeeding, and and obviously that didn't happen. And So it is something you don't really have a maternity leave stint, which is quite confronting, because in my head I'd planned that I was having 6 months off and then I'd return to work part-time and then slowly increase back to full-time from there. And that's not actually a possibility. And so I don't, I'm only learning this myself, and I'm only sort of 4 months or so into this process, and I'd actually love to hear from other people who may have been in a similar situation what they did. One of the other things is that if you earn, so men can take their 2 weeks paternity leave at any point in that first 12 months, but if you start earning income as a woman before you take the 18 weeks, then I'm right in saying that, then you automatically get refused the maternity leave. So there was a great Fairfax report on that recently, on a number of small businesses of women who had missed out on maternity leave for that reason. At the moment, one of the things that I find challenging is knowing when to switch off and when to work and when to take a break. And it almost feels like I can't have any relaxing time or any time for me at the moment, because I should be working or I should be looking after the baby. So I love the idea of, maybe next time, but if I ever get to that point, that, you do plan it and that you do take that nice solid 6 months off.
Fabulous.